What happened at your work which caused multiple people to all quit at once? They laid off half the company with no warning. This included a gentleman who was less than a year from retirement and had been there for 35+ years. The company was shocked when half the remaining people abandoned ship shortly thereafter. The company consistently outpaced competing firms and found itself emerging as one of the industry-leading agencies. This was also a California tech firm. So shorts, flip-flops, beers at lunch, getting high on the roof were all rather common. But we were rapidly growing. And the atmosphere, location made us a hot ticket for talent. Anyway, CFO and CMO cashed out and the CEO decided to totally remodel the company by making it far more corporate. On top of all of this, they implemented unattainable goals and removed our work from home policy. The final straw was they removed our rather generous vacation policy and replaced it with unlimited vacation, which was a facade for you can take as much vacation as you want if we approve it. Like 1/4 of the company quit and immediately landed at better jobs. Also, profit tanked. Restructure of the way we're paid. What I used to do involved about 40% client interaction, 20% team, coworker interaction, and 40% paperwork and case coordination stuff. Based on what we do, that means only 40% of the time is technically billable. And there are really sticky rules for what is and isn't billable. So, logically, we were being paid on a salary model. Q management saying we can only make money for the time we have that is actually billable. 1/4 of the department quit. 2 of us on the same day. Turned out our owner was keeping the Social Security money taken from our paychecks. And yes, he was caught. Edit. Holy crap, this blew up. Owner is just a term for owner of the company. I don't mean anything by it. When I was 16, I worked in the concession stand at a minor league baseball stadium. Minimum wage at the time was $5.15 per hour. This job paid $8. And it was always in the evenings, so it was perfect work for a high school student. The only bad thing was our management was terrible. The main manager would throw toddler tantrums about once a shift over stupid bullshit. Like not ordering enough of a specific beer, she did the ordering, or running out of pre-cut lemons for tea. One night the stadium was running a promotion and it was incredibly busy, easily 2 to 3x the normal volume of customers. We were all working our asses off handling multiple roles each with absolutely no downtime. Although we all cleaned as we worked. Nobody had a chance to do thorough cleaning for the whole shift because of the never-ending horde of hungry baseball fans. The manager showed up 3 to 4 hours late per usual and throws the biggest fucking tantrum ever over the unswept floor. Finally, she announces, "Listen up, you lazy fucks. Minimal work gets minimal pay. Everybody is being paid minimum wage tonight because you slobs won't clean up anything." Both of our bartenders and the barback quit on the spot. Which caused a chain reaction. We all took off our aprons and hats to leave. She blocked the exit and was red in the face from screaming. So one of the cooks climbed out of one of the big serving windows where we served customers. So I did the same and most of the staff followed. Bear in mind that this all happened in front of like 200+ customers. Of course, my final paycheck got lost, so I had to file a wage theft complaint with the Texas Workforce Commission. The owner died and his idiot son took over and decided that the company didn't make him enough money and started to implement cost-cutting measures like turning off the AC in the building. Owners retired. They were literally the greatest people. Both very sweet. But kept the place running like a well-oiled machine. They took pretty good care of us and their restaurant. When they left, they gave the restaurant over to their nephew, who at the time was a busboy, waiter. Kind of standoffish. Didn't really interact with us too much. A bit lazy at times. But for the most part did his shit and went home. He seemed okay. Until he got the power of being the owner. He fired 4 people. Including 2 of the 4 cooks. And 2 of the 3 dishwashers. Literally that same day. On a Friday night just before the dinner rush. All because he didn't like their attitude. He refused to allow people to take vacation that they'd already requested and gotten confirmed by the original owners. Would change the schedule randomly without telling anyone and then scream at people when they missed a shift or came in late because of it. He'd refuse to replenish the kitchen until we were literally already out of things. Then take forever to put in the orders. He showed up randomly and would drink at the bar. For free, of course, because he was the owner. and then bring in all his buddies to drink with him. Together they'd get way out of hand and grab at women and try to start fights. Within the first month of him being the owner, over half the staff had quit, usually walking out literally in the middle of their shifts. After being screamed at, they'd basically throw down their aprons and tell everyone else that they were so sorry but they couldn't do it anymore. After the last cook, this big dude who usually kept the kitchen laughing and running at a decent pace, started crying in the middle of his shift and dropped everything he was doing after the boss came and yelled at him for being too slow and making slop. Then walked out. The rest of us just bailed along with him. 4 months later the place was closed. His aunt and uncle were absolutely furious and devastated that he'd run the business they'd built up for over 30 years into the ground. Anytime I've seen a mass exodus, it was because of poor management. I've never seen it organized. Just a bunch of employees independently deciding to quit in the same month because the management was so bad. I used to work at a McDonald's, and we had a terrible manager who hated a lot of people working there. Everyone else hated him too, but no one wanted to call him out on his shit and quit. I was the first to do it, because I requested 2 weeks off in August of that year. About 3 months in advance. My family likes to plan our summer vacations early on. When August came around he had my schedule set up for all of August off except for those specific 2 weeks. There was no way that he could have misinterpreted my request. When I got my schedule, I stormed into the restaurant, called him out on everything, and then quit on the spot. About 2 weeks after that, I heard from one of my work friends that 5 other people had enough and quit as well. I kind of felt good to be the first. Oh fucking boy. I worked at Buffalo Wild Wings for a few years as a line cook. 2 different stores. Same fucking pay. It was the type of work where you ask for a raise and they scoff and say, yeah. Me too. Anyways, I had been pretty dead set on quitting sooner or later. Our kitchen was very small. Most people ended up closing 4 to 5 days a week with doubles on the weekends, while still attending school full-time as it was a college town. On Super Bowl fucking Sunday, a useless coworker who ducked out in the bathroom most the shift finally stopped showing. And in response the managerial staff delegated closing to my pal Jay. Dude was a fucking delight to be around. Hands down the best coworker ever. Jay had told them that due to being a full-time student, he no longer wanted to be first and last out, 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. 1 a.m. on the weekends. They basically told him to go fuck himself, and that they don't have any more shifts for him. Immediately, me and one other cook walked to the office and quit on the spot. Buffalo Wild Wings lost 4 cooks on Super Bowl Sunday, leaving them with 7 full-time students on the schedule. It was a managerial shit show. New management. In a month, 4 kitchen staff quit, leaving me to be the only original kitchen staff hire from the previous manager. She completely changed the vibe of the workplace. No one was happy. No one felt like talking or listening to music or being friendly. It was robotic. I did landscape construction. The cheap-ass owner kept taking bigger and bigger projects while never hiring more help. We were all overwhelmed, stressed, and anxious as hell. One of our foremen quit and I followed suit a few days later. 2 more guys quit the next day. He was down to 3 guys for the obscene amount of work he wanted to do. Of course everything gets way behind schedule, but he's convinced it's not his fault at all. He went out of business less than a year later. I was hired by the new owners to replace the existing manager. I was under the impression that he was moving on to another job somewhere. So after about 4 days I ask him where he's headed and if he's excited. He just looks blankly at me and says I'm not going anywhere. I'm just training you as the assistant manager. Right? The look I gave him must have been a great tip-off because he got up and walked into one of the new owner's offices. After about 30 seconds they were screaming at each other. Then he just storms out of the office, grabs his stuff, give me the finger, and leaves. Over the next few days I'm trying to calm things with the employees. They're not faulting me, but now have a very bad taste in their mouths about the new ownership. Over about a 7 to 10 day time period my team shrank from 15 people down to 3. I hobbled along with that the best I could while we tried to hire new people. But the new owners were offering so little we had trouble finding people. After 3 months or so of that I started to get fed up and overwhelmed, and when the owners started to get on me about missed deadlines I had it. We were still only at 5 people. 2 of which were brand new and still training. They didn't allow me to refuse work or push deadlines out. They expected the same output as a 15-person team. So after my 3rd day in a row of being berated for missing a deadline that was impossible to make, I quit. I'm the manager of a retail store and I had found out a cashier was stealing product by scamming reward card benefits. I came up with a detailed incident report to present to this employee and I was under the assumption it was just her. After I confronted her in a reasonable manner, she freaked out and got really angry and quit on the spot. She was using fake accounts instead of using a customer's reward card to get herself points and redeem them for product, gift cards. So the customers weren't getting the points they are owed, which is a headache for me if they notice and complain. The next day every other cashier called me and quit, and after thinking WTF just happened, I found out they were all in on it and were using this lady's fake card on their shifts too. So I'm down 4 cashiers and I have 1 left. This same day my last remaining cashier disappeared for 20 minutes. Turns out she was in the bathroom with another employee doing the nasty. She quits because her dad is a cop and doesn't want to find out she got fired for this, and she also asked me if she should go to urgent care because she didn't take her tampon out before they did it and she couldn't find it. The guy also quit because he didn't care and was moving anyway. I was down to literally managers only. So the first part is the mass exodus and the last part was just 4. Can you believe this shit? I was working for a very large IT company. Before the tech bubble burst, we had a meeting with our new director and the VP. They were tired of people complaining about things that should be changed at the job and how they managed people. So they sat around 200 of us down in our auditorium. And the director said she didn't want to hear any more complaints on how she was running things, and if we didn't like, then there was the door, and that there was no way we'd leave such a great job. Well, there was a mass exodus and probably close to 50 people left within 2 months. She and the VP were reorged and given 0 reports. They were gone after a round of layoffs happened shortly after. Worked at a Wendy's and one of the regional managers started running a store because they wouldn't find new managers to replace the old ones. Well, anyways, this guy practically ran the place into the ground. Before he started running the store, most everyone liked working there as it was a good environment. A few months after, a couple of people quit because of him. And one day I roll in at 9 to help open the store and he comes out to my car as soon as I park. I was 15 minutes early and usually just sat in my car until 9, and tells me, "Hey, I need to start early because the 3 openers just quit on me." We managed to get the store open and had a number of people from other stores help run the place until the people from the next shift came in. A couple days later I hear the full story of what happened from a coworker. The regional manager is supposed to be at the store at 7 or so. And the openers 30 minutes later. He didn't actually show up until 8:30. So when the openers, already pissed at being at work really early and not being on the clock, saw the regional manager roll in and knew it was gonna be an awful shift, all decided that they were done with him and just quit right there. So at least 6 people quit because of him by the time I left the place. Probably more left after me. Worked at a data company. The guys in the sales department fucked around all day. They'd literally be in the parking lot drinking beer and racing RC cars. When it came to handling accounts, clients, they frequently gave away free accounts in order to retain customers, and make their own sales numbers look good. And somehow they got away with it. Meanwhile, there were dozens of programmers and database nerds working tirelessly behind the scenes to integrate a bunch of complicated data and make it easy to access via the website. Yearly holiday announcements come around, and upper management decides to send the entire sales team to Hawaii for an all-expense-paid vacation. When the furious developers asked why they were just taking the sales team, the confused CEO literally said, "Well, I guess we could ask the sales team to pick one person from each department who helped them the most this year. And take them too." The programmers, engineers, database people were livid, and walked out in droves. Gee, I wonder why the company tanked. Several years ago I worked in a mental health center. We worked primarily with kids. It was time for the center to renew their certification. Instead of keeping up with everything that needed to be done over the course of 5 years, the proper procedures were ignored. In this couple months before recertification, administration made us sit through a ridiculous amount of training on things that would have been covered in training, such as HIPAA laws and identifying child abuse. Then came our paperwork. Our center encouraged us to do things that aren't exactly covered by Medicaid or approved through certification. For example, taking kids to the park isn't allowed. But guess where they instructed us to take these kids so they didn't disturb the therapists working? I had to go back and edit 5 months' worth of documents to get rid of the evidence. The kicker was that bathrooms were supposed to have a log of when it was cleaned. An administrator perfectly forged the signatures of multiple employees. I don't think they would have went through that trouble just for a bathroom log. What else were they forging our signatures on? The potential risk of being charged with Medicaid fraud was too high for me. I quit, as did many others. Editing to add. I did report them to the authorities. Shockingly, they are still in business. I did what I had to cover my ass. And thanks for the gold. A well-known colleague committed suicide, and we were told by management via a brief side note in an email about stats at the end of the day. It caused a lot of upset in the office, and quite a few people didn't return after this. Cancelled all raises and bonuses for everyone except the CEO. His wife, financial and HR. And his son, utterly useless IT. In a year where we have record profits and brought in almost double the clients on top of announcing they aren't looking to hire more people when we were already overwhelmed. Good part about it was when the majority of us quit, they lost almost every single client shortly afterwards to their competitors, and the company is now defunct. School district. I sometimes sub and had a big round of hiring. A bunch of building substitutes applied for the jobs. And only about half of them got interviews. Of the subs that got interviews, myself included, the only one who made it past the screening interview was a relative of a current employee. The rest of us subs weren't the right fit. The real reason is that there's a substitute shortage and they don't want to lose any of us. Not a single sub, who isn't a relative, was hired for one of over a dozen teaching jobs. Many of the building subs aren't coming back next year. Many years ago in high school, I worked at a movie theater. The place was pretty poorly run from the moment I started there. We never got paid on time, and management was basically a bunch of lazy jackasses who sat in the office talking all day and never actually did any managing. It would have been hard for things to have gotten any worse, but after a couple of months they brought in new management who seemed to want to make it their personal mission to run the theater as poorly as possible. They first decided to implement a new policy requiring all projectionists to wear ties. Despite the fact that projectionists are never seen by the public. Not to mention that tiny little detail that the projectionist worked around giant, rapidly spinning objects that a tie could get caught in. Management refused to reconsider the policy, and every single projectionist quit as a result. They then decided that the door people, of which I was one, who were always scheduled 7 days a week, would now only be scheduled on the weekends, and refused to reassign any of us to concessions on the weekdays so we wouldn't lose hours. As a result, almost every single door person quit, including me. After that, they started imposing impossible cleanliness standards on concessions. Things like requiring them to scrape popcorn kernels out of the cracks in the trim behind the popcorn machines. Concessions was there until 5 a.m. every night trying to meet their standards. Most of the concession people quit as a result. By my count, the theater went from a staff of about 50 to a staff of about 12 in 3 weeks. I swung by about a month after I quit and found out that entire management staff had been fired and replaced yet again by an entirely new one. Ones who actually seemed to be running the theater properly. My best guess is that the previous management had been told to whip the theater into shape, and they were idiots who had no idea how to effectively do that. Our boss had a meeting and announced new policy that all salaried employees had to work a minimum of 45 billable hours per week because of the increased project load we had. I pointed out to a few coworkers that our employment contracts specified 37.5 hours per week, and that I would be adhering to that policy. Well, about a week later I was laid off due to lack of projects. I was happy to go. And at least 2 others left voluntarily within the week. The job I found next was much better, and wasn't run by someone quite so clueless about how to treat people. Company changed from 5 to 8 hour shifts to a 12-hour shift rotation. Edit. Most of the people that quit were the ones that were on straight day shift and didn't want to or couldn't work night shifts. Worked in construction as part of a HSE team. The chief engineer was pissed that the job was taking slower because of the HSE, especially safety procedures. We had a couple lost time incidents at this point and just a week before a guy almost died. But he was still pretty pissed about the delay, so he got everyone in a room to say, "You're not here to do your jobs. You're here to do what I tell you to do." 20 people asked to quit on the spot. Fucking cunt. Working at a local restaurant that had recently changed owners. Multiple issues came up. Difficulty getting off for important things. Hiring people to work in kitchen who were bad at their job but cheap. Cheaper ingredients. Etc. As well as owner just kinda sat around and drank while they're not doing much. Things were tense, and after a few months we were really just hanging in there cause we liked each other. Previous owners were a sweet old couple that set a great vibe. I know some others and I were already looking for a job. Anyways, there was a young mother who waited tables there and really needed the job. Couldn't afford to be between jobs. One night she got a call that her grandmother had a severe stroke. Was unresponsive. And was not expected to make it through the night. She asked to get off and start her 3-hour drive to Dallas. Manager says of course, but the owner says no. Manager and owner got into a verbal fight in the back. The waitress ended up pleading her case. Crying. Manager said that if the owner wouldn't let her go, he was done. Owner ended up firing them both on the spot. Within the next 15 minutes everyone who hadn't been recent hire ended up walking out of the building. Edit. To answer questions. 7 of us walked out. 1 waitress. 1 cook. Dishwasher and the busboy stayed. I actually never followed up to see if they finished shift. But I think they did. I and 1 other were the last of the originals there. We banged out the last couple tickets we had that were placed before the walkout. Not their fault, and I do take some pride in my work. The quality and attendance dropped for a year before the owner sold to a different guy with actual restaurant experience. Original couple returned to reopen the restaurant. It is still going today. I'm not going to name names. No point. Just let sleeping dogs lay. The waitress did make it in time to say goodbye before her grandmother passed. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.